My mother's mother, Aung Si, had an arranged marriage to Chun Wing, a school teacher. They were both of the Siyup clan in southern China. In the 1880s, he came to Yam Creek in the Northern Territory to dig for gold, and she followed shortly after. Aung Si and Chun Wing had 4 children: Bessie, Charlie, Ruby, and Emma Wing, my mother. When Bessie, my mother's sister, was of an eligible age, they had an arranged marriage to William Fang Yuan, a landowner from the east coast of Australia. Fang Yuan was 40 and Bessie was 16. Their parents thought this was a very good match because William Fang Yuan was rich. The marriage contract concerned the whole family who came from the Northern Territory to Marillion on the east coast of Australia to live under Fang Yuan's roof, Chinese style. Fang Yuan and Aunt Bessie had 4 children, and they'd been married about 10 years when William Fang Yuan was murdered. He was shot by the manager of one of his cane farms. At a trial, the manager, a white Russian, was acquitted of first-degree murder. And the Chinese at the time thought this was a great miscarriage of justice. So it was probably at a social event at the Chinese National Club in Cairns that my father met my mother. Charlie and Emma had 3 children, Francis, Alan, and me. We were brought up in the Western way. Neither my brother Alan or my sister Frances or I learned to speak Chinese. My mother could have taught us Cantonese. That was her mother tongue, but she never did. She thought being Chinese was a complete liability, and she wanted us to be more Australian than the Australians. One day, when I was about 6 years old, one of the kids at school called me Ching Chong Chinaman, born in a jar, christened in a teapot, ha, ha, ha. I had no idea what he was talking about, although I knew from his expression that he was being horrible to me. So I went home to my mother and I said, "Mum, I'm not Chinese, am I?" And my mother looked at me very sternly and she said, "Yes, you are." Her tone was hard and it shocked me. And I knew in that moment being Chinese was like a terrible curse and I could not rely on my mother for help. Or my brother, who was 4 years older than me, he chimed in, "And you'd better get used to it." After the Second World War, my parents got a tobacco farm, which they took in lieu of a debt. We all worked on the farm. I hated getting up early in the morning and picking the cold, wet leaves during harvest. Fortunately, my parents agreed that my future was not in tobacco. In the 50s, my parents built their dream home. They had Italian builders, and I think the result is a little Italian-Australian. We'd ride our bikes to school. along a rough bush track. Although I didn't realise it at the time, the landscape was seeping into my consciousness. I studied architecture at Queensland University. I liked being a student of architecture and I bonded with my colleagues. I was drawn to theatre. It was another world where I felt I fitted in. Somehow I knew here I had found my tribe. I wrote plays and directed the architecture reviews, working with composer Ralph Tyrrell. And it was in these artsy circles that I became friends with Jill and Tony Jordan. Jill was a social worker and Tony was a doctor. They, with their colleagues Marie and Nick, bought a property at Maleny. The place had been a dairy, so part of the land was cleared. There was a cow bales or milking shed on the hill. But there was over 300 acres of bushland. I spent time there, several months, living alone. It was quite formative. Firstly, I had to overcome the fear of being alone. And then I had to deal with the actual loneliness. I felt lonely. Once, when I was walking back from the town, I thought I heard someone call my name. But I wasn't completely alone because Tony and Jill would come back on the weekends. Tony loved building things. Jill loved the bales. That place fitted her like a glove. And she planted an orchard. But I had a life in Sydney where I was able to come out as a gay man. And I fell in with this group of people, and we were like a little artistic family. I had my first solo exhibition at the Australian Centre for Photography in 1977. It caused a sensation with its mixture of gay and celebrity. And that's Jenny Key to the right of the photograph and Linda Jackson lying on the floor. But in 1978, I got a bad case of hepatitis and I had to go home to Mother in Brisbane to look after me. I had a long recuperation. My mother liked looking after me as I was back under her control, so to speak. I spent a lot of time at the Hollow recuperating and taking photos. It was a kind of therapy. It made me feel as if I was useful, not useless. Yes, the place healed me. In the 80s, through mutual artistic friends, I met Yensoon Chai from Taiwan. She had been brought up in the ancient traditional way. She wasn't like a modern person at all. She was Taoist, and she made it clear to me that being Chinese was nothing to be ashamed of. She taught me Taoism, a Chinese philosophy. I got a shrine. In short, I embraced my Chineseness. People at the time called me born-again Chinese. But I felt that my ethnicity had been suppressed, and I prefer to say I came out as Chinese. In 1990, I took a trip up to North Queensland. I drove through the cane fields between Innisfail and Cairns. In this place, much of my family's history has happened. I was searching for the story of my murdered uncle, William Fang